now I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Sure.
So what happens when we implement that plan, and I say, well, wait a minute, the band at the school in my neighborhood is not as good as the one on Bloomingdale, and so I'm demanding that my child have the choice to go to the very best. And you have everyone who says, even though we have two schools offering the same quality program, the perception is this one is better, and everyone wants to go there. How do you resolve that issue?
The first thing is you identify what the problem is. If the band, let's say at Islands High School, is better than the band in New Hampstead, which are totally two different ends of the county, and you have a parent who lives out in the Godley Station area, but she wants her son or her daughter to go because the band at the Islands High School is better, then let's find out why they are better. I mean, what is going on at Islands that's not going on at New Hampstead? See, if we solve that problem, then that child wouldn't want to go all the way across town, because we can bring that band up to date just like we could the other.
And Ms. Byrne, one of the issues the board seems to be facing now is, yes, they come up with alternative ideas, but no one wants to be the one who says to that voter, your child can't go to school here. Your child is going to have to deal with the facilities that we have, wait until we build a new school, or your child is going to have to sign up for this lottery, and if they can't get in, then they can't go there. How are you going to be able to say, listen, we don't have the money to make everybody happy, so you're going to have to deal with what we offer? How can you do that?
Well, I think it's already what's in place now, which is, you know, if you don't get into that lottery, then you don't go, or if you don't live in that area, you don't get to go. So that's the current reality. What I would like to see is that, for example, Charles Ellis Montessori, wonderful elementary school. For the last 20 years, it's been a Montessori school. Now that's a very specific type program. You walk in the classroom and all the materials are very specific to that program. The school culture is it's different from when you go to a traditional school. We have hundreds and hundreds of kids on that wait list. If you take, and if we know it works for 20 years, we know it's an excellent school, and we say, well, why don't we choose one of our elementary schools on the other side of the county, and let's train the teachers in the Montessori method, and let's set up the school, because you do have to set up all the classrooms in a particular way. Let's set it up, and then you've doubled the capacity. Then you have two options there. And of course, not every child has the personality or not every parent wants their child to go to a Montessori school. It's a very child-centered way to learn. But we have the classical model, which is being used at Jacob D. Smith, which is our top-rated elementary school. We can take that, which is down in Ardsley, and, you know, train teachers to use that curriculum and that model. And one of our other schools, maybe Spencer, which is one of our most struggling elementary schools. And then you have two.
Is it realistic, though, to say, because I train the teachers at Spencer to do what they're doing at Jacob G. Smith, Spencer will have the same results, so everybody should be happy going there? And is it realistic to say we have enough money to replicate everything that we're doing everywhere and to put those materials into those schools and offer it to everyone?
Well, I think that one of the barriers, for example, with the classical, the core knowledge curriculum, which is what they use at Jacob Smith, they start Latin in kindergarten. They have very rigorous math very early. And we have the Classical Academy, which is a charter school. And they're using that same model. And they're using it with students who are some of the most at-risk students, some of the most disadvantaged students. And we can look at their results, and we can see, because they just started this year, we can see how it's going. And if it's going well, and that's one of the beauties of a charter school, is it's sort of a little experiment there. If it's going well, then we know it'll work for students at Spencer. And I highly suspect it will, just because if you look at how it works in other districts with similar demographics, that it works well. So I think it is realistic. You have to have buy-in. You have to have teacher buy-in. You have to have parent buy-in. You have to have buy-in from administrators. But I also think teachers are really looking for something. The teachers in these schools, they're good teachers, and they are trying their very best, and the tools they've been given aren't working for them. And so if you say, here are a whole new set of tools, and we will hold your hand all the way through it, because unfortunately we have a tendency to throw stuff at teachers and say, but if we really give them the resources they need, then I think teachers will buy in. I think that once you have teacher buy-in, it's going to make a big difference. As far as finances go, you always are going to have to figure out when you want a new program where the money is going to come from. But if you look at the rankings of schools across the country, and you look at how we spend money versus how effective we are, Chatham County is in the bottom. We just are rated as very ineffective with how we spend our money compared to our outcomes. So that means where we're putting the money isn't working. There are programs right now that probably could be either cut or they could be combined with other programs to save money. We also know that we can bring in grant money, and in the past this happened. So we have so many specialty schools already. There are grants out there for those schools. We don't have to make anything new. Those schools are already there. There's already somebody, whether it's the federal government or a private foundation, who wants to fund something like this. So if we bring grant writers back on staff and have them write grants, we can bring millions of dollars in for these types of programs.
And how do you find the teachers to work in the inner city schools where they're going to have a tougher challenge when they have a school across town, maybe kids who aren't struggling as with economically or academically or socially? How do you get those teachers to want to work in the tough school as compared to work in a school that may be a little bit easier to deal with day to day?
Well, that's always going to be a challenge. And that's why we see a lot of times that new teachers that are just brought in are put in the most challenging schools. And all the research shows that when that happens, those teachers are less effective, the outcomes for the students aren't as good, and those teachers are more likely to get burned out and quit before they ever get to the point where they are highly effective. So I think that is an issue with looking at different policies and trying to figure out a way to either incentivize having highly trained teachers there, or even having a policy that says, if you are a first-year teacher, we will not put you in certain schools. So there are different ways to do that. But again, I really think that, I mean, if you look at our specialty schools now, if you look at Savannah-Chatham or Garrison or Woodville-Tompkins, a number of these schools, teachers want to teach in those schools. They want to be a part of that. So if you say we have this model, I think you'll have a lot of teachers who want to be there, even knowing those students are going to be challenging students. When you get kids engaged, they go from being challenging to being, excellent students.
Okay. And is there anything, Reverend Ellis, that
Well,
you'd like to say
when we talk about that, the first thing we must realize is that when you don't have the knowledge of where we've been and what we did and how we got where we are, you make the same mistakes, okay? We had grant writers on staff, and we found that they were writing grants which the schools couldn't implement. They were writing grants and getting the grants, and the school didn't have the facility to do it with. What we found that works better is when we let the staff at the school write their own grants, all right? And when they wrote their own grants and they were responsible for implementing their own grants, we had the most success in this county that we've ever had with grants. Those grants took into consideration what the need of that particular school was. On several occasions, I've mentioned that there's a program that I'm working on that I'm inventing, really. It's called SWOT, and it stands for Strength, Weaknesses, all right, Accountability, and Transparency. That's what SWOT stands for. And in each phase of that, there are 14 different sub-phases that you must implement. First thing is, the perception is that Spencer is a bad school, simply because of location. But when you go into Spencer and look at what's going on, there are some dynamic things going on with Spencer. What we need to identify is, why is it that the scores aren't matching what's going on in the school? And so when you take and evaluate that, because realistically, we don't have the funds. The funds are not, when we look at the federal funds we get, the state funds we get, the local tax money that we get, is not enough to do everything that everybody wants. We will never reach that point. We will never reach the point where we satisfy everyone. But we can be more effective. One of the programs you can look back at was at Marsh Point Elementary, when they allowed Marsh Point and May Howard and a few others to write their own grants rather than having the grant writers downtown write them. And in those grants were incentives for everyone, even the janitors, all right, who clean the school every day, the maintenance workers who came and worked on the different problems that may arise in the school. All of them were in the grant, and all of them got incentives for making that program work. And so therefore, you had 200% effort from everybody that was connected. You see, one of the things that we have to get rid of is the disconnect. The disconnect is those parents who feel like they're going to do what they want to do anyway, so it don't matter if I say anything. You know, it doesn't matter whether I vote or not, they're going to do what they want to do.